An Introduction to Forensic Science. This introduction is a brief description of forensic science, its beginning and development, expanding on some historical moments and figures responsible for key additions in its development. It will also explain the procedure at a crime scene and personnel involved. What is meant by the term forensic science? The word forensic derives from the mid-17th century Latin word forensis, meaning in open court, public. Forensic science is the application of scientific knowledge and methods to law for the purpose of assisting in legal issues and criminal investigation. Forensic science consists of an extensive range of disciplines from fingerprinting, document examination, ballistics, anthropology, entomology and pathology to DNA analysis. Forensic science is the use of strict scientific principles and methods used to collect, handle, preserve and examine evidence. Fingerprinting is probably the most commonly known form of forensic science used in criminal investigations. The earliest recorded fingerprints date to Neolithic man 20,000 years ago. The evident use of thumbs, palms and fingerprints in cave paintings formed using the characteristics of fine ridges found in fingerprints. The earliest record of purposely used fingerprint impressions were found in Mesopotamia 3000 BC. This method of marking was used in the construction of the king's storehouse, which was implicated in the construction of ancient Egypt. German E. 1999. Jeffrey G. Barnes, 2006. In China 3000 BC, thumbprints were used on clay seals to prevent the tampering of official documentation and were often used to identify an individual. By 300 BC, potters used this method to indicate ownership. Showing conclusive examples of recognition and reproduction of friction-rich skin as an individual, this value is understood by the Chinese era. In ancient Babylon 1000 to 2000 BC, fingerprints were impressed on clay tablets for business transactions. Quintilian, a Roman attorney 1000 AD, demonstrated a bloodied palm print left at a murder scene was not that of a blind man accused of murdering his mother. India 1637 witnessed the defeat of the Shahajib Hossain army. Acceptance of the written peace treaty was authenticated by hand impression as a stamp. Solhi, et al. 2003. Sir William James Herschel, 1833–1917, Chief Magistrate, Juniper. India 1858 was the first person to use palm prints for contracts, beginning with local businessman Rajadhar Kanali. This method was used as a personalized guarantee from the Sikhs to combat the Indian uprising with protesting locals not honoring their contracts. Herschel realized by experimenting, the prints of fingers were more relevant than the palm. Using friends and family, he collected many fingerprints. In 1877 Herschel was appointed magistrate of Hooghly district. He instituted the taking of pensioners' fingerprints to prevent fraudulent collection of pensions. He also began fingerprinting criminals to prevent hired impostors carrying out sentences. In 1880 he published a letter in Nature, detailing his work with fingerprinting, and went on to publish an account of his work in 1916 entitled The Origin of Fingerprinting. In 1879 Alphonse Bertillon, 1853–1913, introduced anthropology to the criminal system. His study used 11 measurements of the body. He concluded that the chances of two people matching all 11 measurements was 1 in 286 million. From 1882 Bertillon's anthropology system was used globally in criminal cases until 1914. In 1892 Sir Francis Galton published the first comprehensive guide on fingerprints using 8 basic types of fingerprints based on the patterns of arches, loops and whorls. In Argentina 1892, Juan Vucetich used the fingerprint system to prove guilt in a murder case, proving Francisca Raja had killed her children, not the accused, exonerating her husband. The system was adopted by England in 1894. Further improvements were made in 1896 by Sir Edward Henry, who devised a filing system for fingerprint records by counting the numbers of each character pattern, arch, loop, whorl. The Henry classification system was adopted and used globally. In 1901 Henry was made head of the Criminal Investigation Department, CID, at Scotland Yard. It was here he set up the Fingerprint Bureau. To date, no single case has been recorded of two people having the same fingerprints. In July 1829, Sir Robert Peel formed the first police force in Britain with the formation of the Bow Street Runners. The first officers were put on the streets the following year in September 1830. The Bobbers, or Peelers, as they were known, went on to solve the first recorded ballistics case in 1835. In 1905 the FBI was created, setting up their first dedicated crime labs in 1932. The FBI were pivotal in creating the concept of profiling, the application of criminal psychology to crime scenes to determine a criminal profile. The forefront of modern forensics is DNA. In 1984, Sir Alex Jefferies developed the first DNA profiling test, publishing his work in 1985. DNA taken from a crime scene could now be compared to a suspect's, providing match or exoneration possibilities in the region of millions or billions to one. DNA testing has a multitude of uses, including parentage, ancestry, whole and bit parts identification, or disease. Lockard's exchange principle, Lockard 1920. Lockard 1929, is a concept that was developed by Dr. Edmund Lockard, 1877 to 1966. While studying medicine, Lockard developed an interest in the application of science to legal matters. He worked as an assistant to Dr. Alexander Lacassagne and in later years pursued a career in law, passing the bar in 1907. He went on to study alongside anthropologist Alphonse Bertillon, famous for identifying criminals using his anthropometric system. During World War I, Lockard worked as a medical examiner for the French Secret Service, helping to establish the causes of death of French soldiers and prisoners. He examined marks, stains and damage to uniforms and wounds to confirm the cause of death. Lockard speculated that when two objects make contact, there is an exchange of physical materials, trace evidence. In 1910, the Lyon Police Department offered Lockard the opportunity to create the world's first police laboratory where evidence could be brought from crime scenes to be examined scientifically. In 1912, the laboratory was officially recognized. Traces of physical materials, no matter how microscopic, tell a story. It is almost impossible for two objects to contact each other without depositing an exchange in the process. Trace evidence is factual and physical. Biological or impressionable trace evidence can be found, each vital in connecting and collating the timeline of events, in turn to be analyzed, compared, evaluated and verified. In the case of Tracy Andrews, the road rage killer, Tracy insisted another driver had attacked and stabbed her boyfriend Lee Harvey to death and she had cradled him in her arms as he lay dying. Despite her insistence, Tracy's clothing was consistent with an attack, but inconsistent with the marks that would have been made when cradling a dying man. It was also suspected that the elongated blood stain found on the lining of a boot Tracy had been wearing was possibly created when hiding the blooded knife used to kill Lee Harvey. The knife was never recovered, however she later confessed to his murder and disposing of the knife she had used by flushing down a hospital toilet. In the case of Ian Huntley, both red Manchester United shirts worn by Holly and Jessica and their other clothes were found cut and burned inside a bin situated in an outbuilding of Soham Village College, known as the Hangar. Ian Huntley denied possessing keys to the Hangar, however police discovered a set of keys at his home in the school grounds. Two of Huntley's hairs were found on the burnt clothes. His fingerprints were identified and matched on a bin bag which had been placed on top. 49 tiny fibers matching the girls' distinctive Manchester United shirts were found on Huntley's clothes and around his home. Fibers from Huntley's carpet and curtains were also found on the shirts, establishing a two-way link between the clothes and Huntley's home. What are the key specialists that can assist at a crime scene? And how can they assist a crime scene investigator? A crime scene is dependent as to which specialists are required. A body at the scene will be assessed for time of death, its location and the content of the crime scene. A scientific support officer is the team leader and directs all aspects of scientific support to a senior investigating officer, SIO. A crime scene manager, CSM, conducts a survey by walking through the scene, making an evaluation of all potential evidence. To prevent potential cross-contamination, the CSM cannot attend further related crime scenes. A CSM is allocated to each crime scene. The Scientific Support Manager assigns tasks to CSI team members accordingly and liaises with CSMs to ensure cooperation between all parties and the SIO. Ultimately, a CSM will only release a scene once all potential evidence has been collected. Pathologists. A body present at the scene will require a pathologist, the first specialist member to attend a crime scene. They will work to establish the initial cause of death and time, initially avoiding disturbing the body. It may then be turned for further examination. A rectal temperature is taken and compared to the ambient location temperature. A dead body cools at the rate of 1 degree Fahrenheit per hour subject to the location's ambient conditions. At this stage, a calculation of time of death can be estimated. The pathologist is entirely responsible for the body, working on behalf of the coroner, and is the only person that can authorize its movement and retention. The body will be photographed in situ by a CSI photographer under instruction by the pathologist before it is moved, ensuring all forensic evidence is recorded, collated, analyzed and evaluated. Once the body has been removed from the scene, it will be subject to an autopsy. This can reveal marks, bruises, impressions, flesh injuries, compressions, broken bones, toxins, and disease. Entomologist. A decomposing body harbors many infestations. The entomologist can remove and track the development of larvae as well as extract DNA, and determine the time and location of death. It is also possible to locate movement from several locations. Each locality has a variation in foliage and the insects that thrive in them. As slight as this may be, it can crucially identify the movement to a scene from a different origin. Anthropologist. An anthropologist can identify individual human or animal bones where a skeleton, partial, complete or individual fragments are found in the absence of all other organic matter. Construction work often reveals sites of historical and archaeological interest, most recently the discovery and resting place of King Richard III. Flesh may also be present in a mass of unidentified body parts at a mass disaster or terrorist attack. Anthropology can identify age, sex and causes of injury and death. All body parts require identification to enable return for burial. Criminal profiler. A criminal profiler will study the scene, noting placement and patterns, logging as much detail of the crime and the scene as possible. Applying comparisons to other crimes such as modus operandi, object placement, body, position, knots, particular ties or bonds, organized or disorganized, etc. Essentially, all this information is entered into a database of predicted crime outcomes. This will reveal a likely psychological profile of a perpetrator, which can be used to screen potential suspects, including age, gender, occupation and social development. Conclusion. Studies in modern technology consistently prove the complexity and individuality of fingerprints, arguably an infallible form of trace evidence. The creation of body forms continue to expand our understanding of entomology. Since its inception, DNA has had much controversy, overturning many cases. This can only be testament to the importance of ensuring all forensic science is methodically executed without error in its collection and handling of all trace evidence, to equally prove guilt or innocence.